They claim they're basing it on a reduced footfall from last year, but I mean, like, obviously there was reduced footfall due to the pandemic and people weren't in a position to travel or were encouraged not to travel. So I suppose what Sinn Féin, what we're proposing is that this decision is postponed for a period of time. So say a moratorium put on a decision to close any branches, 3 of which are in Cavan. We have Cootehill, Kingsford and Arba, until the end of 2022. And what that would allow for is a banking forum to be established so that this issue of the future of banking can be discussed in detail by all interested parties. Because we have to, I suppose, acknowledge the fact that more and more people are banking online. So it is going to lead to a reduction in footfall and people going into the bank, but it still doesn't suit everybody to bank online. And we have to stop thinking of the bank as a business and, you know, a business just to make money. Okay, we don't want to see any bank losing money, obviously, but it doesn't have to be all about making more and more profits. It should be a service to the people. So that's what we want to look at. Maybe look at some sort of a structure like a community bank, which will serve the needs of the people. So what we're asking, I suppose, is that, as I said, a stay is put on this decision for a year and a half to allow us to look in more depth at what the future of banking is in the country. We just feel it's going to be detrimental for rural Ireland in particular, because any village or small town in particular, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect cities as well, but particularly rural towns and villages where a financial institution closes down, it has a knock-on effect on the businesses in the area, because people will go elsewhere to do their banking and then they will do whatever bit of shopping they need to do in that other town. And I've seen it happen in my own village of Kinelec, where first we lost the Ulster Bank and was it the ATM, then the credit union closed, and then the post office. So we have nothing there. So even though there's a lot of businesses in the hinterland, a lot of people living in it, and children attending schools and are participating in sport, the main street has become almost dead. Like, whereas, you know, shops and pubs are closing. So we want to see that revitalised in some way. And the same thing has happened in other towns and villages, and is going to happen in more and more towns and villages unless action is taken to halt this. So that's just kind of laying out our position. I suppose what we want to hear is just feedback from people on the meeting about what they think, and then we just feed it all back and then try and have some sort of campaign to put this into action. Now, the Financial Services Union are very much singing from the same hymn sheet as we are. They're looking for the moratorium as well, closures, and on a banking forum to be established to discuss this further.
Okay, Pauline, Paddy here.
Okay, Paddy.
I will just start off. Now, this has been coming a long time now, Pauline, as we know. Every time you went into the bank, there was some of the services done away with. I know here in Bailieborough, the first start of it was the counter service. You could only go a half a day now and a half a day again. They didn't want kind, they didn't want this, they didn't want that. They wanted to put you into a corner and talk into a machine. That's the way it was gone this long time. This has been coming for a long time. And unfortunately, maybe we didn't act quick enough, but it was raised at the council meeting yesterday just for the benefit of the people on the meeting tonight. And there is unanimous support across the parties and none about what we can do. Now, Clifford Kelly and John Paul and them were saying we lobby our Oireachtas members. The point I made was we have to lobby the 2 parties as in government, along with the Greens. They are the parties that will maybe change this or try to change it. What they were saying too was that, or it's known that the Bank of Ireland is trying to put a lot of the services towards post offices and credit unions. And as we know, the post offices can only handle so much. I know in my own town, the post office had his own building, now is stuck into the corner of Super Value. There's no secrecy in it. Everybody's walking in and out, and people want a bit of privacy when they are in the bank. In Cootehill, as Bridget tell you, is stuck in the corner of the supermarket as well. So it's not the way forward. And banking online doesn't suit everybody. It doesn't suit me because I don't trust the system and I didn't grow up with it. And there's a lot more people out there that just won't use banking online. Plus the fact that a lot of areas in our county don't have broadband. See, that's all right if people have broadband to do all this. So I don't know where it's going to go. I don't think the banks are going to change their mind, unfortunately. But the one bank that should have allegiance to the people, as you've already pointed out, Pauline, is the Bank of Ireland. We own the bank. We bailed the bank out, so they should show more allegiance to the people that put them there. And another question I would just like to ask, maybe in general, the buildings that the banks have on our streets, where are they going to go? Or why can them banks or buildings not go back into the ownership of the people of the towns or into the councils to make use of them and maybe put something into them? So that's just my feel on it.
Okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Patty.
I'd like to come in there, Pauline, as well. Just on the ground part of it, I was speaking to people over in the Arva area, and in 2017, they were told at that time that the Bank of Ireland were committed to staying open. Now they're after going back of their word and they're going to close it. In that general area over around there, there's an awful lot of concern about it. People is actually devastated because it's closing. They've been telling me that there's actually deeds of houses in the banks over in there, and they're very worried about it. I know that'll all be sorted out and everything like that, but people is just very, very worried about it at the minute. They heard that Arva was closing, and then another big knockback was Granard, which is only over the road as well. It's gone. So that whole area is devastated, in all fairness. We're talking about banking online. Well, broadband and everything is so bad over there that it's actually impossible to do. You know what I mean? You can't even get mobile coverage in an awful lot of that area over there. So people is left in a bad way, and they definitely need to get some help. And I'd agree with trying to fight to keep the banks open. You know, like the state itself here has 14% ownership of the banks. So like they should definitely try it. The government themselves, they have to come along and put a big input into this to keep it open. There's no doubt about that. Like after putting in 4.7 billion, as you say yourself there, you know what I mean, in there, and that's only back in, what was that, not 10 years, well, 10, 11 years ago, that was paid in. So like we definitely need them to step up to the mark now and say, look, we're not going to close it, especially in the pandemic time, but also for going forward, further than that, we definitely need to keep the banks open. It's the heart of the small businesses, and if somebody wants to go in and get a bank overdraft, they go in and they talk privately about it. They don't go into a supermarket to get this done. So I really, really think that the banks the pressure should be put on to keep them open.
Okay.
Thanks, Polly.
Thanks, Noel.
Pauline, if I could come in there.
All right, Damien.
Yeah, I just fully agree with what Paddy and Noel is after saying there. I've seen it at first hand over the last number of years when the bank left Killishandra and Belturbet, two towns that were doing very well. And from the bank's closed, it's very noticeable on the main street in these two towns. The smaller businesses do definitely suffer. And the reason they suffer was because with the banks went the ATMs. And when people come into these smaller towns and villages to shop, they take the money out, the ATM, and they go to the local shop. And I seen it at first hand as well during last year in the pandemic when the local football clubs volunteered to deliver messages and any goods that needed to be delivered to people to survive. And I was one of those people that was involved, and I was helping out at one of the supermarkets. And we were drawn shopping to people that was isolating and everything else. And we were going through them towns, and it brought it home to me when I was going through Killishandra and when I was going through Belturbet, that the people were getting their shopping in Ballyconnell. And they had been doing that before the pandemic because the bank was in the town. They were withdrawing their cash and they were going to the local supermarket. Then people were driving through Killishandra, they were driving through Belturbet, coming on to Ballyconnell to this where the bank was, doing their business in the bank and stopping in the local shop. Like, it will have a devastating effect on this, on like we hear all the time that there is special grants for trying to open up our towns and villages and the main streets on them, and an incentive to keep the people there. This is going to drive a wedge further into that, and the shop fronts will close down. We know pubs are closed at the moment with the pandemic and everything else, but a lot of them will never open again. And we know that for a fact. Like, I suppose banking has changed, and we talk about the farming community, and I spoke to some farmers over the last number of weeks and days from this news broke. And the day that they go to the mart or the day they go to the factory, they don't get paid maybe, and like a check comes and they have to lodge the check, they have to go to the local bank. So like people in, younger people certainly that grew up with banking online and paying with their phone and paying with their card, and now it's a watch that a smart watch and you can tap it off the machine. There's a lot of the population is not up to speed with what the banks is saying. And I was involved in writing between letters and emails when the banks was closing in Killishandra and closing in Belturbet. And someone sitting in Germany over the bank just sees a dot on the map as far as they're concerned, when Killishandra was concerned and Belturbet or Ballyconnell. It doesn't, but like, there's huge employment in some of the areas where these banks is, and they are so badly needed. Like, if it's for change for the businesses to use in their tills and everything, everybody hasn't gone to a card or to a watch or to a phone yet. So I think that certainly what the previous two speakers, Noel and Paddy, said, like, there needs to be serious pressure, and we bailed them out, the taxpayer, and they need to show some loyalty to their customers and to the business people and to the huge businesses that have supported them over the years.
Okay, thanks, Damien.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, Pauline, that, I agree totally with what all the speakers have said before about, the impact it's going to have on people and on rural communities. But one of the points I want to bring up with you, Pauline, you mentioned there earlier about, at least Sinn Féin would be calling on a moratorium for at least to the end of 2022. But I think it's very important in the interim that proper planning is going to be put in place for, that we just don't kick this further down the road until the end of 2022 and then start talking about it again. We need to be planning now. And the other point I wanted to raise was around what we talked about. Our banks are gone. In most towns, post offices are gone, or they're relocated, as Paddy said, to a corner in a supermarket, which to me is totally unacceptable. Why anyone would be asked to conduct a private business, in a corner of a supermarket where there is no privacy or there's no dignity, for anybody. So like, I don't think to say that we can do our business in a post office, that's not acceptable. And as the other speaker said, not everybody uses online. There are people who have literacy issues. There are people who it's just not, broadband is an issue, for lots and lots of people. I think there needs to be options. It's not a one-fits-all, response. There needs to be different options to suit the various, cohorts within our population. So you're reducing grant funding, say like town and village renewal, to kind of rejuvenate our town, and then you're pulling out the mainstay of the town, as in your bank. Yeah. It's ludicrous as far as I'm concerned.
Because it is something that's going to affect all the towns that are losing their bank. Even if it was something that the banking could be done, a 3-day week or something like that, because it doesn't suit everybody to go online. A lot of people want to come in and have that human contact. So it is good to get the discussion going, for sure.
Absolutely. And I know that the Financial Services Union did a survey and they just had up the results. And I mean, about 80% of people still say they value their local bank. You know, now it is higher in rural areas, it's higher among the older population, but it's still the vast majority of people from all backgrounds value having the bank that they can walk into. So they mightn't use it all the time, but you know, they still value having it there. And I wouldn't mind, like a few years ago, social protection were practically promising people everything and anything if they would move from the post office to the bank.
Yeah.
No, and now
It's done a turn, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, they should never have done that. They should have left the services with the post office as it was anyway, you know, because that affected many post offices who were struggling to try and make ends meet, you know, in smaller areas in particular.
It's an everything else, I suppose.
Anyway, yeah, but Bridget, you're right. Like the planning needs to start now, going forward. Like I don't know if the bank will hold off on this decision or not, or whether there be enough pressure brought to do it. But whether they do or they don't, I think the planning has to go in to try and look at future banking
even
anyway.
if they do or don't,